to Leslie's reading room. Here comes another chapter from Happiness is Egg-Shaped. This book comes complete with a glossary, words that are particularly peculiar to South Africa and South African language. In the glossary, there is a word called a bakkie. A bakkie is a light lorry, a light delivery van, or a pickup van. The chapter I'm going to read to you is about a bakkie, but it's called In an African Storm. Are you ready? Are you listening? Here we go. A bakkie is a small truck with an open body and low sides, built strong enough to carry an ox, and usually with a high wheelbase and an optional removable canopy, rendering it suitable for taking the children to church on Sundays. And in South Africa, this is something most people actually do. People who do not own a bakkie always need to borrow one. If you are the proud owner of even the oldest, tattiest, and most run-down and battered version, you will always be able to clock up a few friends who need to transport cement, furniture, or rubble to the dump. A bakkie is most commonly seen hurtling along with at least 15 hapless workmen in a motley range of badly fitting blue, white, red, and turquoise overalls, destined for some piecework somewhere, crammed together on the back, clinging for dear life to its sides and spilling over round the corners. Our bakkie was 20-year-old Ford Cortina, with ventilation holes for flooring and enough rust to cure anemia in all of Africa's children, but otherwise as solid as a rhino. Not only had it seen better days, having been owned by a parachute enthusiast, but it would see even better days after we sold it. It is the new owner painstakingly stripping it and rebuilding it until it is unrecognizably splendid. A task which could take a year and increased its value 5 times. Old bakkies, like Krugerrands, do not appreciate. The gear lever came away in your hand. The passenger door didn't open, but you could carry a ton of fodder on the back and she would tractor on. The danger of falling through the gaping hole in the floor had been effortlessly remedied by placing a slab of 2.5 centimeter thick steel plate across it. Although the bodywork had almost breathed its last, the engine still had another 300,000 kilometers in it. As long as the distributor did not get wet, she just kept going. Now, neighbors of ours had given up the joys of sheep farming and were going to emigrate to New Zealand. They were giving away furniture, and we wanted to go and collect some. That afternoon. But now that afternoon, it had begun to rain. This is not the kind of rain where you don a raincoat and open an umbrella. The umbrella would be blown inside out. You could get soaked through in a dry mac. And Wellingtons are no use in a meter of floodwater. This is an African rain. It is stay inside and wait until it stops rain. Our friends were leaving that afternoon, and my son Eric had a prize-giving ceremony at school that evening in which he played a significant role of flag bearer, not to mention receiving a certificate or two. It was to take place in a hall of a nearby church. If we were disorganized and tended of necessity to live in survival mode, our eldest child, Eric, was reliable, responsible, conscientious, and punctual. He hated to be kept waiting and couldn't bear to be late. Remember, Mum, I have to be at school on time. Be sure you are back early enough, he said. We have a dress rehearsal and I've got to be there. Don't worry, darling. I shall be at school in plenty of time, I reassured him. He gave me a hard and knowing look. We had to drive our bakkie to a friend's farm as it was the only vehicle with enough loading space for the furniture. As we drove down the 1.5 kilometer long farm track, the heavens really opened. The trusty old bakkie soldiered on, its massive, deep-tread tires coping well with rain-sodden trenches, which minutes before had been a track and were now mud in a flood. We were pushing ahead as fast as we could because we were pressed for time. Then we hit a really deep puddle. Muddy water splashed up on the bonnet and the engine died. Oh, blimey, now what are we to do? I groaned. We've got to collect Eric at 5:30. We weren't even at our friend's house yet. It was 4 o'clock and we were stuck. Just calm down, said Casimir. Maybe it'll dry out. 20 minutes of torrential rain later, there was no response from the engine. And if we continued to try to start it, pretty soon the battery would be flat. I decided to do what any decent woman would do in a crisis. There wasn't a soul in sight, not surprising considering the meteorological conditions. You've got a jumper, lend me your t-shirt, I said. I was wearing a really old green cotton golf shirt, which had once belonged to Casimir. I don't care if it gets oil on it or anything. It isn't mine anyway, I explained as I stripped off my t-shirt. Quick, before anyone comes past, I said, and put on Casimir's shirt while he put his jumper back on. He then climbed out into the rain, becoming soaked through in minutes. He lifted the bonnet and tried his best to dry out the distributor with the old shirt. The downpour continued unabated. Casimir turned the key in the ignition, but there was no response from the bakkie. Dead as a dodo, he commented. Let's pray, I suggested. Casimir tried the starter again. Suddenly, against all odds, the engine fired. We cheered, laughed in amazement, and hugged each other in elation. We reached the farm, loaded the goods in the wet and the cold, sloshed back as far as the tarred road, sped back as fast as sanity would allow, and finally reached our house at 6:22. Poor abandoned Eric, absolutely beside himself, was waiting in full school regalia. Where have you been? I'm going to be late, he asked. He was terribly upset. I'm so sorry. We broke down, but don't worry, I promise I'll get you there, I responded. I shot into the house to change into something respectable and clean, and slapped on some lipstick and grabbed a hairbrush. Follow me in the bucky later. I have to get Eric to prize giving right away now, I yelled to Casimir, who was hopping around in one sock and one shoe. Eric was already in the car, waiting for an answer. Without waiting for an answer, we roared off, screeched into the parking lot at 6 o'clock on the dot. Eric leapt out of the car, rushed into the hall, grabbed his flag, and did his rehearsal, while I sat in the vehicle, in the car park, in the driving rain, and tidied myself as best as I could. In the rearview mirror. Casimir sauntered in about 30 minutes later, as though nothing had happened. He was showered and trimmed, and we waited the last long and tedious half hour together for prize giving to start at 7 o'clock. And that, dear viewers, is why happiness is egg-shaped. By J. Day, published by Corrals. Do grab yourself a copy. It will cheer you up no end.